The question of what caused the fall of the Roman Empire is one of history's most enduring debates. It was not a single event, but a complex tapestry of interconnected factors spanning centuries. The final act is often marked in 476 AD, when the last Western Roman emperor was deposed. However, the seeds of this collapse were sown long before this symbolic date. Internally, the empire had been hollowing out for a very long time. One of the most significant internal pressures was chronic political instability. The succession of emperors was rarely peaceful, often decided by military might. The period known as the crisis of the 3rd century was particularly chaotic. In just 75 years, more than 20 men claimed the title of emperor. This constant civil war drained the treasury and diverted attention from external threats. Widespread corruption further eroded public trust and the state's effectiveness. Officials often enriched themselves at the expense of the populace. To manage the unwieldy empire, Emperor Diocletian made a radical change. He divided the Roman Empire into a tetrarchy, a rule of 4. This created an Eastern and a Western Roman Empire, each with its own Augustus and Caesar. While temporarily stabilizing, this division fostered long-term separation. Constantine later reunified the empire and moved the capital. He established Constantinople as the new Rome in the east. This strategic move shifted the empire's focus and resources eastward. Western Empire became increasingly isolated and vulnerable. Economic troubles were another cancer eating away at the empire's foundation. Centuries of warfare were incredibly expensive. The over-reliance on military spending drained the state's coffers. To pay for soldiers and wars, emperors repeatedly devalued the currency. This led to runaway inflation, making life unbearable for ordinary people. Oppressive taxation crushed the agricultural backbone of the empire. Many small farmers abandoned their land to escape the tax burden. The empire's reliance on slave labor also stifled technological innovation. As conquest ceased, the supply of new slaves dwindled, creating labor shortages. Trade routes, once the arteries of the empire, became increasingly unsafe. The Vandal conquest of North Africa was a particularly devastating economic blow. This cut off Rome's primary supply of grain. The gap between the extremely wealthy and the desperately poor widened dramatically. Military decay was another critical factor in the empire's decline. The once mighty Roman legions were not what they used to be. It became increasingly difficult to recruit Roman citizens into the army. To fill their ranks, the empire turned to hiring foreign mercenaries. These soldiers, often referred to as barbarians, had little loyalty to Rome. Their allegiance was to their paymasters and their own chieftains, not the emperor. This created a military that was both unreliable and a potential threat itself. Vastness of the empire's borders was a constant defensive challenge. From the forests of Germania to the deserts of Persia, threats were everywhere. This overexpansion stretched the military impossibly thin. External pressures, often called barbarian invasions, were the final hammer blows. Centuries of migration and conflict culminated in the 4th and 5th centuries. The arrival of the Huns from Central Asia created a domino effect. They displaced many Germanic tribes, such as the Goths. Seeking refuge, entire Gothic populations crossed the Danube River into Roman territory. Mistreatment by corrupt Roman officials led to a massive Gothic uprising. This culminated in the disastrous Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD. A Roman emperor was killed, and a whole army was annihilated. This defeat shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. In 410 AD, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, accomplished the unthinkable. They marched on Rome and sacked the Eternal City for 3 days. The psychological impact of this event was profound across the empire. Other tribes soon followed, carving out kingdoms from Roman land. The Vandals crossed from Spain to Africa, taking the empire's breadbasket. In 455 AD, the Vandals also sacked Rome, this time more destructively. The Franks moved into Gaul, which would one day become France. The Angles and Saxons began their migration to Britain. The Western Roman government lost control of its provinces one by one. Social and cultural shifts also played a crucial role. Some historians argue that a decline in civic virtue weakened the state. The rise of Christianity is a contentious and complex factor. Early Christians' allegiance was to God, not the emperor. Some argue this new focus weakened traditional Roman patriotism and state religion. However, the Eastern Empire, which was heavily Christian, survived for another 1,000 years. This suggests Christianity alone was not the cause of the Western collapse. Environmental factors are also gaining more attention from historians. A period of climate change, known as the Late Antique Little Ice Age, impacted agriculture. Cooler temperatures and changing weather patterns led to crop failures. This would have exacerbated food shortages and social unrest. Devastating plagues also swept through the empire, killing millions. The Antonine Plague in the 2nd century caused immense demographic loss. The plague of Cyprian in the 3rd century was another catastrophic blow. These pandemics weakened the economy and the military by reducing the population. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was a hollow shell. The emperor held little real power outside of Italy. Provincial generals and barbarian kings were the true rulers. The final fall in 476 AD was more of a whimper than a bang. The Germanic chieftain Odoacer deposed the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus. Odoacer did not claim the imperial title for himself. Instead, he sent the imperial insignia to the Eastern Emperor Zeno in Constantinople. This act symbolized that he would rule Italy as a client of the Eastern Empire. For many people living at the time, the change was not immediately obvious. Roman institutions, language, and law continued in many places, albeit in a changed form. The collapse was a long, slow transformation, not a sudden event. In essence, the Western Roman Empire was not murdered in its prime. It died a slow death from 1,000 cuts, both internal and external. The intricate systems of political, economic, and military power had failed. The fall of Rome marked the end of the ancient world. It also signaled the beginning of a new era in Europe, the Middle Ages. The legacy of Rome, however, never truly died. Its language, laws, architecture, and ideas would influence the world for millennia. The story of its fall remains a powerful lesson for all subsequent civilizations. The empire's vast road network began to fall into disrepair. Aqueducts that supplied cities with water were not maintained. Urban populations declined as cities became less hospitable. Literacy rates plummeted across the former Western Empire. Long-distance trade collapsed, replaced by local subsistence economies. The unified Mediterranean world of Rome was fractured into many smaller pieces. Lead poisoning from pipes and cookware has been proposed as a contributing factor. However, most modern historians consider this a minor issue, if one at all. The sheer scale of the bureaucracy became a burden in itself. Communication across the vast empire was slow and inefficient. An order from the emperor could take weeks to reach the frontiers. This made it impossible to react quickly to crises. The Roman state was essentially an engine of conquest that had run out of fuel. Its economy was predicated on expansion, which had ceased by the 2nd century. The defensive posture of the later empire was a massive drain on resources. Loss of a sense of shared Roman identity, or Romanitas, was critical. People's loyalties shifted to their local region, their tribe, or their religion. The Praetorian Guard often acted as kingmakers, assassinating emperors they disliked. They then auctioned off the imperial throne to the highest bidder. This brazen act showed the deep-seated corruption at the very heart of the empire. The Huns, under Attila, created a vast empire that terrorized both Romans and Goths. Attila was known as the Scourge of God. A combined Roman-Visigothic army managed to halt Attila's advance at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. It was one of the last major military victories for the Western Roman Empire. But the victory was Pyrrhic, and the empire remained fragile. The assassination of the skilled General Aetius removed the last capable defender of the West. The empire's ability to manage its finances effectively had completely collapsed. The state resorted to seizing property from the wealthy to pay its bills. This only encouraged the rich to withdraw their support from the state. The system was eating itself from the inside out. The fall of the West was a complex process of fragmentation. Power devolved from a central authority to numerous local ones. The idea of a universal empire in the West was lost for centuries. It was replaced by a patchwork of warring barbarian kingdoms. The end of the Western Roman Empire was a pivotal moment in world history. It demonstrates how even the mightiest of empires can ultimately fall. The combination of internal decay and external pressure proved to be fatal. No single cause is sufficient to explain the entire phenomenon. It was a perfect storm of political, social, economic, military, and environmental crises. The legacy of this collapse shaped the future of Europe and the world